Last week I concluded that the Polynesian Cultural Center is a great place to learn about culture, and that I wish I could spread it some more. However, there are other methods to spread culture, and I want to discuss one of those this week. A common question about music is whether or not it's created by a single person or a large group. And the reality is, you can see each person adding to the music, but it all kind of wraps into one great whole. For example, these are a bunch of amazing guitarists from different albums working together to create one song from Game of Thrones. However, this creates an interesting idea. What if music can share? What if music can share culture? I came onto this subject accidentally because YouTube decided to just show me a bunch of music combined that made me really think about how music shares what we think about and how we think about things. By the way, I want to make a couple of provisos. The first one is, if you like any of this music, please just look it up. I'm leaving links in the description and I want you to check them out, because this is some good music. I enjoy it. I am no stranger to this music. However, YouTube is saying each song is somehow connected to each other, so if you say, well, that really isn't metal, is it? Then my response is, YouTube says it so. Just so that we can just move on and discuss the music as it is. For example, Scandinavia is death metal and metal haven. It is the greatest place to find metal, and has become so popular that even children's groups are playing metal, and then releasing R-rated flicks about said band members. Because metal is so big amongst Scandinavians, they've started to put subjects that you don't even expect into the subjects. For example, the man about to emerge is Richard Dawkins, biologist, evolutionists, atheist, quite famous, and he helped Nightwish with a song, an entire album even. And everyone was just like, yeah, good, let's learn more about him. But then they did something else. They took their ancient ideas, their Viking heritage, all of the thoughts that they've had beforehand, and started to place it into their music. They've started to talk about Vikings and their culture as a way of describing themselves to others. And that started a really amazing thing. Some of it is referencing just old medieval music that you would find in any Renaissance fair out there. For example, I'm sure you're noticing the hurdy-gurdy and other instruments from the Renaissance in the room. And yes, a hurdy-gurdy is exactly what you think it is, and it's being used for metal. Really kind of a shock, but then you listen to the music and you're like, yeah, it kind of fits in there, doesn't it? But then we have people who take it really far, take it as far as they can to show their culture. For instance, Heiling, which is just it's hard to show, except just show you the video. They're trying to be as traditional as they can, and yet reference modern ideas. It's actually not for everyone, and honestly, I don't enjoy every single song they make. And there's moments where I'm like, I think they're going a little over the top and trying really hard to make these people look foreign. Keep that in mind. Often, even trying to reference their own culture, they end up looking foreign on accident, even though they're not trying to do that. Other cultures took the music and started to make it into their own, adding their own culture and ideas into it. The one you probably know the most is The Who. the H. I haven't looked it up yet, sorry. But it's a Mongolian band specifically having metal and traditional Mongolian music. There's throat singing. There's stuff that you would find in all the Scandinavian stuff we've seen beforehand. And yet it has its own twist and tale within it. There's even a Japanese band that does the exact same thing. Then we have Bloodywood, which is very traditional, but adds a lot of Linkin Park to it as well. Their story about missing a dog actually got me to cry, and even talking about it is making me feel kind of angsty because I miss my dog. She passed away 2 years ago. There's even a nerd version. But the one that surprised me the most was the ethnically Mormon version. It's about vampires, but it's very much so a Mormon-type video. And don't even get me started about ethnic Mormons and how they can exist. That's a totally different subject.
This world has only one sweet moment set aside for us.
And then one just hit me really hard what I was viewing and what it was saying. It was made by a Maori band in New Zealand. It's about a Maori historical moment when one band of warriors completely decimated a tribe. It's a bloody, horrible mess. And the truth is, the story is about 200 years ago. And yet, it seems more brutal and more fierce than all the other videos. The reality is, we have questions about cultures sometimes, and we don't admit them out loud. Sure, the Vikings were foreign, but the people who are Vikings now, they're not foreign. Of course not. But the Maori, those people in the Pacific Islands, well, aren't they foreign? And it's kind of weird how it hit me, because I know the Maori very well, and they're actually very kind people. And yes, the people doing the singing, doing the playing, they're Maori. They just don't look like it in your point of view. That's a whole other subject, let's not get into it. But also, I want to point out that the tattooing, I don't know if that's Maori traditional or just Polynesian in general. Everything else, that's Maori. That is very Maori. From the poses, from the way they're holding things, from the fact that they're showing off their butts, to everything else, that is as Maori as they could possibly get it. Even to the point that moments they sing in Maori. This was not an attempt to make a foreignization of their own culture, but to talk about it, to say this is our past. Let's talk about it. Let's look at it. Let's look at the horrors of our people. And it has a completely different feeling, even though it's being done in exactly the same way as the Scandinavians. And it's made me really, really rethink how the Scandinavians were portraying themselves. Because if we're seeing the same thing with the Maori, then are we seeing the same with the Scandinavians? And we just haven't realized it yet? Or do we think the Maori are still like this? And that's why this has such a visceral feeling, before the others? It's a lot of questions, and I don't claim to have a lot of answers. At the same time, we often take our own cultures and we apply them to different things. We make grand stories and create these new ideas and new people. Are we going to allow the Maori the same? Are we going to allow them to come in and say, we are part of this? We're allowing the Ha. We're allowing the Japanese. We're allowing the Hindus. But will we allow the Maori? Do we think that they're somehow too foreign? In our minds, are they? Or are they?
Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Korg. I'm kind of like the leader in here. I'm made of rocks, as you can see, but don't let that intimidate you. You don't need to be afraid unless you're made of scissors.